All right, this thing better work. Can't believe it. I just did 44-minute email share, marked them all as read, and this thing didn't record the audio. Oh my God, tell you what. Anyways, I think, yeah, at least they'll go to the top list. I got this. I can get this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shares I did too. All right, here we go. Because now I got to hurry because I want to get this done. I've been really busy, obviously working towards our move, and I am going to try to get up at the top of the mountain where I filmed that, whatever it was I filmed the timber. I'm going to do that today. This could possibly be the last chance I get to do it for weeks and possibly weeks. And there's something just bugging me to go up there and set up the camera. I'll do some shares from up there and as well set up the camera where I filmed from, and I'll go walk over into the timber in that tree and I'll stand there and see what we can find. Why am I going to do that? I don't know, but I'll do it. Here we go. This is titled An Interesting Encounter. All right. Hey, Steve, if you read this to your viewers, you can use my first name only if you want to. All right, Eric, consider it done. So I'm from Clearfield, Pennsylvania. This is one of the many stories I have. I'll try to keep it short and to the point. So my friend and I used to go to a local train bridge down from the VFW and hang out at the night. It was a peaceful place to go for a short walk. We went down one night and kept having strange vibes about it, but we still kept walking. We got down the bridge and paused for a moment and then walked halfway out onto the bridge. We were there for about 10 minutes talking and laughing. Then all of a sudden a huge rock flew off the hillside and hit the water so hard it hit the bottom of the river. And I heard it hit the other rocks in the bottom. And for the critics, no, it did not roll off the hill. It was thrown there. There was no other noise till it hit the water. Anyway, we both paused and shined our lights to the other side and didn't see anything. So we just got up and left because I wasn't hanging around. We got off the other side heading back to the truck and we heard a wood-on-wood knock. And I'm a pretty big guy, but my ass got the hell out of there so fast as I could. Still to this day, I haven't been back down there at night. I still hunt white-tailed deer down there despite what happened. Thank you for what you do. Eric, thanks for that share. I think I may have shared that before. And if I did, I did. If I didn't, well, there you go. And keep your head in a swivel if you could continue the hunt there. Obviously, these beings, they've let you know they're there. So just prepare yourself in case you have a visual and try to prepare yourself for that moment because a lot of people that absolutely ruins it for them, right? They don't go back in the woods again. Many people it ruins it for. So be safe out there, man. And thanks for emailing in. Hoopa Reservation Stories. Hi, Steve. I've been watching your channel for quite some time now. Really appreciate your educating the public on the nature of these creatures. I personally had a large rock thrown at me in the Uwharrie National Forest of North Carolina. Uwharrie National Forest, North Carolina, and heard a huffing and moaning howl outside a cabin near Index, Washington. I also heard an unnerving scream outside a cabin in northern Michigan. My son once went camping on a friend's property in Orange County, Virginia. He and his friends had rocks thrown at them when sitting around the campfire, and later that night, something was pressing on the tent he was in. Eventually, he had to answer nature's call, went outside the tent in time to see a large figure in the moonlight emerged from the woods and crossed the trail that led to the campsite before disappearing into the woods again. My boy was so unnerved he grabbed his rifle and crawled under his pickup truck where he spent the night. However, it's a story my brother tells of when he worked as a pharmacist on the Hoopa Indian Reservation in Northern California that you find most interesting. This is in the early 90s, so his memory is a bit sketchy at this point. After gaining the trust of the residents, he started to hear stories about the Uma, as they call these things. One woman said she and her family were camping when a Uma walked through their camp in broad daylight. She saw where the thing left some fur and collected it. My brother asked if he could have some of it, and she gave him some, which he then sent to me. I, in turn, gave it to the BFRO for analysis, and they eventually said it was bear fur. Of course they did. Obviously, I don't know who was fooling who. In any case, sometime after the incident with the Uma walking through their camp, this woman said she saw a line of men all dressed in black, carrying rifles, walking in a line abreast in the same area. She didn't know who they were, but they weren't from the reservation. Another woman said she is terrified of these things, since as a child she was playing catch when she chased the ball into the woods. She came face to face with an Uma who just stood there and stared at her. She ran away, of course. By the way, back when I worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency, a sergeant I knew there said he was hunting in southeast Ohio and had picked out a spot to ambush a deer when he heard footsteps approaching from behind. He turned to look and saw a yellow blob thing in the shape of a man. Then it disappeared. This guy, like me and my colleagues, had a top secret clearance, which you don't get if you're a known liar, so I believed him. This guy also had an interesting UFO story, but that's for another channel, I guess. As Shakespeare wrote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." Thank you for your work, Steve, and stay safe. Yes, you can use my name. I never have cared what people think. Thomas Wolke. Either Thomas Wolke or Thomas Wolke. Thomas, absolutely appreciate that share, man. And if you hear more, if you hear anything that you think the people will benefit from, make sure you get it into us, all right? It's very important. Give everybody a voice. Like, everybody's voice is going to be heard. Be safe out there, man. Here's another one. Hi, Steve. I was born and raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I'm a city boy. When I was 10, I found a book about Bigfoot by the author John Green, a.k.a. the Sabe Killer. Rotten hell. I digress. My dad, rest in peace, took me to see the movie Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot, where I saw the Patterson video and was hooked. Roll forward at 20 years old, I joined the U.S. Army, infantry, and ended up stationed in the now-defunct Fort Polka, L.A. During a deep field exercise, while on a guard duty at about 2 a.m., I heard a loud baby crying scream with a roar mix. It was at least a click away, but it made the back of my hair stand up, and I immediately knew what it was, but couldn't believe it. It lasted about 30 seconds and then ceased. A fellow soldier who was born and raised in Louisiana said to me, "Boy, they've been here way before the First Nations. Don't bother them and they won't bother you." Obviously, I didn't sleep that night. I spoke of this to my family, but they just kept using me as the brunt of a joke. I'm so glad you got this YouTube going for the subject. These are not apes, per John the Idiot Green and the other monster hunters on TV, Money Blaster. These things are real, and I at least can throw this little bit of info to those distraught by what they did want to experience. You know, your book was bought for me by my wife for Father's Day. I love it. Keep going. If you need a 50-year-old grunt, if you need a 54-year-old grunt at your side carrying our banner, I'm your man. Take care and watch your back, Jesse M. Right on, Jesse. Thank you so much for that share, man. Thanks for the support. We all appreciate you going out of your way to share with all of us. So appreciated. You got to hear anything else you feel the people need to hear or know, you make sure you send it in, all right? Fruitland, Utah, Uinta Basin. Hello, Steve. My name is Shauna Ellis, born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've experienced a lifetime of strange, greedy, and evil individuals beyond belief. I'm half Cherokee, half Irish, and full-blooded human with love for all races and religions. In Utah, we have the Spy Center and Draper Hill Air Force Base, Dugway, proving grounds for the Thule, Utah, Area 52, and more. Something really wrong is going on in this state. I'm one that has no desire to have religion or government sticking their hand up my ass trying to move my mouth like a puppet for profit. This is my story. May 1988, we bought a cabin in Fruitland, Utah, Uinta Basin area, a fixer-upper cabin on 40 acres. We worked on every weekend. In May 1988, we had about 10 to 12 family members come up to Fruitland for the long weekend and to put a push on remodeling the cabin. The second day we were there, they all took off to go fishing. I stayed behind to relax and babysit my brother's large German Shepherd dog that I didn't like, and it didn't like me. I was sitting on the porch looking through a pair of binoculars and trying to scope out the area, but my brother's dog had other plans. He was driving me crazy by laying his toy in my lap, whining and wanting me to play. Irritated, I stood up and threw the toy as hard as I could across the wash. The dog ran to get it, but before he reached the wash, the toy was thrown back at me. Stunned, I stood up and looked over the wash. There was no one there. And then I waited a couple seconds and threw the toy over the wash again. This time I kept a good eye on it. Standing there staring at the toy, it dawned on me that the dog didn't go after the toy. I looked down at the dog, and in that split second, the toy was thrown back at me. Now I'm freaking out. I looked back towards the wash, scanning side to side. It took me a few seconds to see it. There was thin strips of a shiny gray and silver material moving in a circle. In the middle of the circle was a dark gray, tall figure with long hair and a muscular build. It was illuminating inside the circle, looking right at me. Scared, the dog and I ran to the cabin and locked the door. This dog that didn't like me much was now my buddy on my lap, staring out the window and shaking like he was trying to shit a peach seed. A couple hours later, when the others returned, I told them about our experience. That was the day I became the laughing stock for my family and friends. I never spoke to anyone again about all the other happenings I saw because my honesty was accepted as crazy talk. September 1988, I'm in Fruitland, winterizing in the cabin when we were approached by some concerned locals. They stated that some of the cabins had been vandalized in the winter when the owners are gone. They offered to keep an eye on the place, and if we gave them the keys, they would periodically check to make sure no one was inside. They said, when you're ready to come back, call ahead to make sure we're home, and we'll meet up with the keys. Thinking that was really nice, we took them up on the kind offer. May 1989. My mom and I headed up to Fruitland, and we forgot to call ahead for the keys. We arrived at the cabin with a spare key and started cleaning up. I noticed a man's size 48 undershirt and several little kids' toys stuffed into the couch. Immediately I felt sick. My stomach started hurting, like I had been punched. Confused, I went out on the porch and began walking. In deep thought, I found myself behind the bunkhouse staring at this massive red boulder. I've walked that area several times before, and that boulder was never there. I started walking towards it and got about 6 feet away when I heard a loud, deep, growly voice in my head yell, "Run!" Immediately terrified, I turned and ran as fast as I could towards the cabin. I felt as though someone was right behind me, but I was too afraid to look back. In 1993, I found myself divorced and totally isolated away from my family. They all thought I was nuts. In 1997, I moved to the cabin in Fruitland and went to work at Strawberry Bay Marina. There about a year when they hire a young girl around 17 to waitress. One night she asked if I could give her a ride home. As we're traveling down this dark and dusty road, there is nothing but thick cedar trees. This girl says, "Do you remember me?" Glancing over at her, I said, "No, should I?" Then she starts telling me a story that made me stop my car on that scary dark road. She said, when she was a small child, she and other children in the area were used in a child sex ring. How disgusting is that? She starts recalling the time when she was 6. A boy 4, a girl 3, and herself. Oh God, we're in our cabin with a man. When the man heard you and your mom coming down the driveway, he panicked, grabbing all her toys and stuffing them into the couch. He then threw us out the back window. We crawled on our hands and knees to a big red rock. The red rock had a cave on one side. They chiseled a hole out on the back side to hide in. If owners arrived, we were not there long when we heard someone coming. He inched closer to the entrance, motioning us to be quiet. He pulled out his buck knife from the holder, attached to his belt, and waited for the person to come around the rock. All of a sudden, we heard the footsteps running away. Afraid they might have seen us, we were guided up over the hill to another cabin they used. She said this sex ring would con owners of cabins with the story of protecting their property. They would insisted the owners call ahead to get the keys. This gave these animals the time they needed to clean up the cabin and move the children to a different location. With this feeling of dread, started bawling my eyes out, and I couldn't catch my breath. I then reached out for her and hugged her tight while she continued talking. She said if you would have walked the 5 more feet around the rock, he would have killed you. I'm sickened to think of what those babies had to endure from these monsters and their clientele. I'm more sickened by the voice telling me to run and save myself when no one was saving them. And that's a good point. What the hell was going on there? I started looking back at that time when I entered the cabin and saw an arrow and a pair of binoculars drawn on the dust on the coffee table. The arrow pointed upstairs. As I topped the stairs, a pair of binoculars was sitting in the window. I picked them up and immediately noticed 4 men dressed in all white, like beekeepers, crouching down on a small hillside, looking back at me. When they noticed I was watching them, they slithered down the backside of the hill. Another strange thing is that that day the toy was thrown back to me twice from the wash. I believe whatever it was tried to warn me of danger there. Whatever it was saved my life and possibly my family's also. 2 of the men shot each other when drunk and poaching elk. They ended up in prison. What 2 men are you talking about? Is what I'm curious of. 2 of the men. That's the confusing part. Dressed in white, appeared to be like beekeepers from the distance. So are we talking about those 2 guys shot themselves while poaching, or was it the child molesting prick that shot himself? Those guys. Anyway. The other monsters, God only knows, and whatever was outside playing catch with me. P.S. My brother didn't bring toys up to the cabin for his dog. For you only, Steve. All right, then we have a little bit of a message for me. All right, got it. And thanks for that share. I think I get too enraged when I hear about children being harmed. It's real tough for me to swallow because it makes me want to go hunt these people and kill them. I'm not even gonna sidestep around that one. I just want to go and get them and end them. We unfortunately watched a human trafficking show on Netflix a little while ago, and halfway through I was so going on fire. I was actually sitting trying to figure out how I could generate the funds and hire a group of skilled professionals and go over to this one specific area and get these people who were getting off away with selling human beings and just go over there and kill them, right? Somebody's got to do it. I mean, even the authorities over, I think it was the Ukraine, even the cops were returning the poor girls who escaped to the traffickers to again be raped countless numbers of times. It's just such sad, disgusting shit going on. I just don't know where all the good guys are. What are the good guys doing? What are you guys doing that have access to firearms and know where these people are? I mean, use your skills and get these guys. All right. I'll stop. Let's get back on track here. Thanks again for sending it in, all right? And, the apparition, the shimmering being you saw, that's been noted more than dozens of times now. To the point, it's obviously it's going on. And if you hear of anything else or learn anything else that you feel we need to hear, make sure you share it, all right? And be safe out there. And maybe even send some pictures of that cabin, maybe even that rock in the cave if you can, and show us and share it all with us. Maybe somebody else knows something. You never know. All right, what do we got? Big Sasquatch, Braylorne, BC. All right, Braylorne's just up over the hill from me. Braylorne, Goldbridge area, dozens and dozens of sightings there. Obviously, probably the same beings that are right here out back. As the crow flies, I'm just on the other side of a couple hills from there. Here we go. I'm going to try to send this again. I'm not giving up. I'm hoping you tell my story. It would mean a lot to know I wasn't the only one in that area. All right, Deb, you got it. And believe me, you're not the only one. It happens all the time. I've spent a pile of time around there. Trapping wolves, hunting moose, guiding people to moose and deer, and I'm very familiar with the area. I grew up in a small gold mining town about 7 miles from Lillooet in the Bridge River Valley, fairly isolated. I was a brownie, and our little troop had planned an overnight excursion to a historical cabin on a very isolated lake. It'd be good if you could throw me back the name of that lake and let me know where that was if you get a chance. Very early the next morning before sunrise, I woke and desperately needed to visit the outhouse. It was very, very creepy. Not a breeze stirring, not a sound, no morning birds chirping, nothing at all. When I'd finished, I was considering the 50-yard dash back to the cabin when the hairs on my neck stood up. Instinctively, I held my breath and felt as if someone was watching me. I was standing at the shore of the lake, and my eyes shot to the opposite bank, not very far away, as I saw a dark mound by the water. I stood froze as the mound stretched and unfolded itself. My mind was clicking so fast trying to acknowledge what I was looking at. Even at 9 years old, something told me this is a very special moment. I gasped out loud to catch my breath, and this is when he, I think, turned and looked at me. Very gracefully, he, I think, eyed me for more than a moment and then turned to saunter back into the tree line. With the snap of only one branch, he was gone. I made my way back to the cabin and never told a soul about what I saw. So shook was I. And then the revelation came to mind, and I knew for sure. When I was smaller, I used to have night terrors of some large animal screaming in the night. When I asked my father what it was, he, being a gold miner, said, "No, that's just the air whistling through the hoist." But after hearing the audibles on Bigfoot, I now know exactly what I heard and gave validation to what I saw. Anyways, keep safe in your journeys and keep telling the truth. Deb McNeil. Deb, absolutely appreciate you going out of your way to email me. I'm super glad I found it and shared it. And if you talk to people around there, actually, if you talk to people around anywhere, look them in the eye, square up in the shoulders, not people from the city, on average, you go to places like Lillooet, like you said, Braylorne, Goldbridge, Williams Lake, Pemberton, Whistler, Squamish, you find so many people that have had these experiences. It's ridiculous. It's endless, and you are definitely not alone. What's this one? Minor story. Hey, Steve, I know you're a busy man, and I doubt my story makes the ranks. Dude, they all make the ranks, man. Nothing's better than another one. This is getting the voices heard. That's what we're doing. So let her rip. Here we go. What do you got? I followed for more than a year before saying mine. I've told 2 people, and one gave me his. I felt bad for sharing mine. Hair stood up on end. I've been in the woods all my life. Harvested my first squirrels at 5 years old, my first deer at 8 with my dad. I've hunted about 20 states now. I'm also a 6-year Army vet. I do believe in these creatures. I caught a set of tracks hunting Roosevelt elk in the Skookumchuck area of Washington. Anyhow, my dad ran a VFW my whole life. It's Ohio, not their territory. On Sundays, he would bring me to work. I would spend the day shooting on the 28 acres. I was big into Wilserps, and he supported it. Also big into competitive shooting. Anyhow, one day I took my Remington 54 into the woods. I was about 13 years old, well trusted at that age to go back and hunt. Hoping to bop a few bushy tails, I tucked into my favorite tree base and waited, watched the tree limbs. I noticed how quiet it was. All of a sudden I heard this voice in my head, "Get out of my woods." Not a normal voice. I stood up looking for the source, thinking a neighbor. Then it boomed in my ears. It was way too loud to be human. It was booming, supernatural. I ran to my dad's bar. I was shooken up. I always thought a demon of some sort. It was petrifying. But maybe a being coming through. I have no idea. I'm a really level-headed guy who has never feared walking into the woods in the dark, and I still don't. But I never set foot in those woods again. What's your thoughts? My name is Dan Graben. Feel free to use it. Thank you for what you do. Dan, appreciate it, man. What do I think? I think that I've read a similar experience to you literally hundreds of times now. So there's no denying it's going on. That's one thing for sure. How they managed to do it, I haven't a clue. Why do they do it? I don't know. But I know one thing. If they were an actual predator of human beings, you wouldn't have heard shit. Right? So there's something to be said about them getting in your head and booming that voice into our brains. Because if they wanted to end us, kill us, or eat you, I'm 100% confident you're not going to hear nothing. It's just going to go down, and that is typically how it goes down with any successful predator, right? They don't warn their prey. So, I don't know. Do you go back there? I haven't a clue, man. I don't know. You go with your gut instinct. It's what you do. You go with your gut instinct on where you decide you're going to go hunting and where you're not going to go. And if it ever feels wrong, it is wrong. And get the hell out of there. That's about all I can add into that for now. Thanks for sharing, man. Here's another one, titled "The Goat Sucker," from Urioste. Hello again. From 1996 to 2001, a bizarre series of animal mutilations was reported in several cities in southern Brazil, making a distinct path from the state of Paraná to the state of Sao Paulo. Domestic birds, sheep, goats, cows, dogs, all taken in rural places, usually with very deep claw slashes. Precise circular acid-burnt puncture wounds, missing internal organs and no blood. One puncture in the neck, other in the abdomen or chest. In 1997, in the state of Paraná, the veterinarian medic Maria D. Valente made necropsies on some mutilated carcasses and reported some patterns in the attacks. There was delayed decomposition of the carcass, no bad smell or insects even 3 to 4 days after death. Wow, that's amazing. Even after being buried or left in the water. It was not eaten by carrion birds until some days had passed. That's pretty wild because, obviously I've been around a lot of dead animals, and blowflies blowing their eggs usually starts within minutes with the right weather conditions. So that's pretty crazy. Nothing went in there for days. That's bizarre. There was a predilection for female animals. Fetuses were always missing, and the uterus was also often taken. The places where the attacks had happened always had water near it. The attacker attempted to drag the victims to water. There were 3 clawed-deep wounds, as if the animal was grabbed by the side during the attack. Before a deadly puncture wound was done, often of the same diameter. In birds, it was near the stomach or the heart. Larger mammals had the jugular punctured. The internal organs were apparently removed through a single orifice, sometimes all, other times a single specific one. Around this wound there were burns as if some acid had corroded the hide. The burns appeared as if they had been abnormally healed for 2 to 3 days after the wound. The ears of the sheep were often ripped in a single clean, straight cut, sometimes found in the field. Some sheep survived the attacks with missing ears and wounds. Blood tests showed acute anemia caused by great hemorrhage. They usually died after a few days. No blood was seen on the scene. 3-toed footprints were sometimes found in the scene, unlike any known local animal. A dark, short-haired kangaroo-like creature with a round head, sharp vampire-like fangs, and fiery red eyes was sometimes sighted near places where attacks happened. UFO orbs were also sighted and filmed in some places. The perpetrators seemed to be skilled enough to enter closed animal pens without destroying them, and was usually very stealthy. Sometimes the animals were scared by the creature, alerting their owners. Often tens of animals were killed in a single night, and repeated attacks killed all animals of some properties. After the incidents around mid-1997, Army presence was sighted around the city of Bokiova do Sul Parana, where the first attacks had happened. Locals reported that the Army and foreign scientists were hunting the creature and covering up the incident. Edu. Holy shit. That's crazy. And you're not the only one to have reported that. It's been reported lots in the States, even in Canada, I'm pretty sure, but I know there's been a pile of the same things have happened in the United States. And it's pretty frickin' bizarre. And if anybody out there knows anyone who has taken part in investigating and trying to clean up these messes, or somebody who knows exactly what's doing it, email it in, share it with us, man. Share it with the people. Let us know. Let us know. All right. Now, there are so many emails. So many. I think I started a new folder in my notes on my phone for the month of July. And I haven't even burnt through the emails from previous numerous months back. But I'll tell you right now, there is so far, July 21st, there is 45 emails copied and saved to this folder for July from my email inbox, and that's not all of them. I had 335 emails shared, copied and pasted into my June folder. And that's not all the emails that were in all the inboxes of the email. It's incredible. One thing to take from these numbers is the fact that it is swinging around finally, right? People are starting to talk openly far more than possibly previous history. People are speaking out loud now, becoming brave, realizing they're not alone, and that we all got their backs. And there's a huge, huge number of very intelligent, kind, hard-ass, tough people, hard-working, honest people here following this channel, supporting it. The people here are they're such freaking good human beings. You got to admit, you guys, there's so many of us here that would probably be lifelong friends if we were ever to meet in person. Don't you agree? But anyway, it's the people. It's the power of the people. That is why so many more people are sharing now than possibly have ever before. Isn't it great? Isn't it just a great thing? It's such a great thing. Please read String of Events in Luther, Michigan. All right. I am reading it, my man. Sorry for resending this. I reread the first one I sent you and noticed some errors that would have made it more difficult to read. And I apologize for the length of this, but I have a lot to share. All right, man. And I got some time to share it for you. Let her rip. I've always been skeptical, and dare I say a bit arrogant when it came to the subject of Bigfoot until November 16th, 2020. I never thought to share these encounters with anyone other than the people that went through them with me, my brother and my cousin, until your video posted December 1st of someone else having an encounter near Luther, Michigan. I am 23 years old. Growing up with my mother's side of the family being heavily Native American, stories of Dogman and Bigfoot were commonplace during family visits when I was a child, but to me that's just what they were, stories. Encounter number 1. My grandparents owned a cabin up in Luther, Michigan, about 45 minutes from anything other than a single bump tiny gas station and general store. Their cabin atop a large hill, dirt driveway of about a mile long with a creek that went on for miles at the bottom. My brother, our cousin Cody, and I used to play in the creek together having mud fights or catching bullhead catfish and all sorts of other small fish. We'd spend hours and hours playing at this creek from dusk till dawn, wary of black bears due to the neighbors down the way having a small blueberry field. One summer I was 8. My brother and cousin were both 12 at the time, making it 2005. We were down at the creek with a grandpa's Rottweiler, Rocky. We always felt safe being far from the cabin with Rocky because he was fearless and known for chasing off black bears. It was like any other day. Despite the rotten smell in the air, we'd all been jokingly blamed the rotten smell in each other's hygiene. But after an hour or so of being at the creek, we realized the silence in the woods around us that was normally filled with life. And we soon after realized Rocky wasn't playing with us like he usually would. He was about 20 feet behind us, staring into the distance past us. We shrugged it off and kept playing until we heard the snapping of multiple tree limbs and twigs coming from the direction Rocky was looking in. Instantly, we all looked at each other and thought, bear. Then, to our surprise, we looked in the direction of the commotion and saw a half a silhouette of a large dark figure peeking out from behind a tree about 50 yards away from us. Shortly after, we all locked eyes on this large dark figure in the distance. Rocky, our Rottweiler, took off in the opposite direction back towards the cabin. By the time we registered that Rocky ran away, we all instantly became aware that maybe we should be scared and ran too. The 3 of us regrouped in the cabin's front yard, which was about the size of a football field, gasping for air and laughing nervously, thinking that we just escaped a black bear. My brother and I started walking towards Rocky, who was waiting for us at the cabin door. We opened the door to go inside and then realized Cody wasn't with us. He was in the middle of the yard staring into the tree line. My brother and I was confused and called out to Cody. He didn't flinch. He just kept staring into the tree line. It was then that my brother and I saw what had to have been the same black figure we saw down by the creek, pacing back and forth very calmly. It was at least twice the height of the wooden fence at the tree line, which was 5 feet tall. And we could clearly see 2 giant long arms swinging down almost to its knees as it walked. Alarmed, my brother and I started screaming to Cody, telling him to run inside. But instead of running inside, he started to walk slowly to the woods, as if he were in some sort of a trance. Our grandpa heard the commotion and came running outside with his 12-gauge, probably expecting to see a bear. It was only then that Cody seemed to snap out of whatever trance he was in and came sprinting to the cabin, crying hysterically. The figure in the tree line was gone. Our grandpa began asking us questions. We told him about what happened at the creek. And then we all looked to Cody. Our grandpa asked him what on earth he was thinking trying to walk out to that black bear like that. Cody said that the hairy man told him, "It's not safe here. Come with me. It's okay. I won't hurt you." My brother and I scoffed and said, "Black bears don't talk, Cody." But our grandpa looked terrified, and we couldn't figure out why. He told Cody, if he ever sees a man like that again, do not listen to him. Run. Our summer at the cabin was cut short, and we all packed up and went to our grandpa's house back in Muskegon for the rest of the summer instead. When we got home at the end of the summer, my brother and I told our parents what happened, but they laughed at us and told us we were cute for having such imagination and that Grandpa was just trying to scare us again. We were really confused, and our parents told us it was just a black bear and to be more careful next time. That's frustrating to read that, isn't it? Isn't it frustrating to hear that, you guys? Encounter 2. It wasn't until a couple years later that we went back up to our grandparents' cabin again. It was 2007. I'm now 10. My brother and cousin Cody, both 14. This year, our grandpa gave us a warning to be extra careful. We were up to our old summer shenanigans down at the creek with Rocky. This time we were taking the biggest sticks and branches we could find off the ground and whacking them against trees, break them in half, trying to see who could break the biggest stick. We noticed Rocky all of a sudden going from excited and chasing the broken stick fragments to becoming cautious and frantic, which is totally out of the normal for him, so we began to pay attention to the woods around us. There's a smell in the air, musty, rotten. Rocky lays on the ground in a submissive way, but it's been a few minutes, and we just figure he must have not been feeling great, and continue grabbing large sticks and breaking them over the side of the trees. Then out of nowhere we heard a loud ruffling from the distance, followed by a loud snap that echoed through the now dead silent woods around us. Then we heard a loud thud, as if a tree had broken and fallen over. My brother Cody and I felt this undeniable sense of terror, and then took off for the cabin. Rocky ran alongside us and then ahead of us. We could hear very heavy footsteps behind us, one thud for about every 3 or 4 of my steps, it seemed, and I was running, jumping over fallen trees and stumps, etc. Twigs and branches were snapping behind us, and we're looking at each other, feeding off each other's fear. We're all now sobbing and out of breath. We went back to the cabin. Rocky was waiting impatiently at the door, whimpering. We ran inside frantically. Our parents questioned us, and after hearing what happened, said it was probably just a black bear, and they were happy we were smart enough to not try and mess with it this time. Nothing else happened the rest of our summer visit to the cabin this year. That year, unfortunately, our grandfather passed, and summer visits were no more. We never thought anything more of our 2 encounters than just having come close to a very large black bears. My great aunt and uncle bought the cabin and used it as their hunting cabin from there on, and I never went back as a kid. This last year, 2019, I had a son, who is now 1, and figured out how to learn how to hunt, so someday I can at least introduce it to my son, as my dad had done for me so many years ago. I planned on a hunting trip for 2020, open season with my brother. We talked to our great aunt and uncle and got the permission to hunt on the property at the cabin in Luther, Michigan. Encounter 3. November 14, 2020 rolls around. I'm 23, my brother's 27. We meet up at the cabin the day of November 14th and discuss our plans for opening day the following morning. My brother is set up behind the cabin about a half a mile, and I'm set up in a blind down by the creek because we saw a buck there on our drive in. My brother gets a buck on the 15th, and I saw nothing. So on the 16th, he decides to come and sit with me in my blind and hang out. We were whispering, reminiscing about our summer spent here, catching fish, having mud fights, etc. A foul smell filled the air. My brother instantly waves his hand by his nose and blames me, laughing quietly. I shake my head no and said he did it. Then we hear ruffling leaves coming from further down the creek, and we both switch back into hunting mode. Get real quiet and pay as close attention as we can, looking in the direction of the noise. The smell grew stronger and the ruffling got louder, but we were too focused on me getting this buck to really care the smell. Then a dark-haired, humanoid beast of a creature that stood about 9 or 10 feet tall stepped out from behind this tree that had to be about 4 or 5 feet wide, and the creature was just as wide as the tree it had been standing behind. It looked in our direction. I could tell it knew we were in the blind. This I had no doubt of. Instantly my ears began to ring, and the feeling of pure terror came over me. This feeling I had only felt once before in 2007. I shook my brother, who was also frozen in terror, and asked, "What the hell is that? What do we do?" frantically. He said nothing, still staring at the beast that looked our way. My ringing in my ears began to settle. I could now hear the deep growling breaths of the beast that stood about 50 or so yards out from us. The terror in me grew even more after hearing its breaths. My grip on my rifle grew tighter, and I flicked off the safety. My brother put his hand on my hand to stop me from doing whatever it is I may have been thinking of doing at that time. My brother decided out of nowhere to yell, "We're leaving!" towards the creature. Began slowly unzipping the blind, standing and motioning for me to follow him. He stood up slowly with his hands up in an attempt to show he was not a threat, and I did the same. Once we were both standing outside of the blind, we began slowly backing up towards the cabin, still facing the creature, both of our breaths trembling from fear. Then in an instant, it turned and with a huge grunt took off running back from where it came. In that moment, my brother and I turned and began running to the cabin. We both made it back inside this cabin, shocked to the core, breathing heavily with absolutely no words for what we just saw. When we regained our composure, I looked at my brother and said, "Oh my God, that's what we saw when we were kids. That's what tried to take Cody into the woods." We were both distraught and came to the conclusion there was no reason to tell anyone what we saw that day because we knew we'd be told we were wrong, that Bigfoot is just stories our family told us as kids to scare us. I haven't even thought of stepping foot in the woods again since the incident, even though I haven't filled my deer tags for the season. I don't know when I'll be able to, but I know when the time comes I'll be much more aware of my surroundings. Up until this year, I had written off the 2 encounters we had as children as probably having seen a black bear. But now after putting the pieces together, the smell occurring each time, the silence of the woods around us each time, and then the third time getting a real look at the terrifying creature that had been present now for 3 encounters, there's no way in my mind I can write this off as not having been a Bigfoot. Then the similarities told on your channel cemented in my mind that it had to have been a Bigfoot that we encountered. Thank you for providing a safe place for us to share our stories. Hope everyone is safe during these hard times. Holy shit. There you go. William, I absolutely appreciate the time you took and your bravery, your confidence to send that email and share it with all the people here. Your voice just got heard by hundreds of thousands of people. Crazy. What a crazy, crazy experience. You know what, man? I don't know. I mean, I always try to encourage people not to drop their passions for the outdoors after they have the experience of these things. But it is a big request, to ask somebody to try to kick it aside and keep going. It's a very, very tough thing for anyone to do. Like I said before, even myself, I question my sanity when I'm at home at nighttime all the time about some of the places I go. But then for some strange reason, then I go again, and when I'm there, I'm just rocking it out, and it feels good and comfortable. So I don't know, man. Try something. Go somewhere else. Let's go somewhere else. But don't stop going out, all right? Just don't stop going. You got to live your life. There's nothing worse than not being able to live our lives to our max, right? And let's face it, we're all dying. Every single one of us is dying. Right now, together, we're all dying. And some of us are going to go sooner. Some of us are going to go later, but we're all going to end up dead. So just make sure there's no regrets when you get to the end of the trail, all right, you guys? Make sure you live your lives to the max. But anyway, on that note, I got to get my ass out of here. It's getting a little later, and it's going to take a bit for me to beat my way up the mountain. And I'll show you, hopefully, if there's enough light and time, I will show you a camera angle of how far it is to get up there, and I can almost show you where I will be. And hopefully my gut says it's okay, and I'll set up the camera, and I will walk into the timber and stand by that tree where I possibly film something. All right? Here we go. Everybody be safe. Keep emailing in those experiences.